First, a warning. This episode contains offensive and strong language and references to violence against women that some listeners might find upsetting. From the Times and the Sunday Times, this is The Story. I'm Jane Mulkerrins.
I've always been quite interested in the story about Andrew Tate, and this latest episode kind of took me by surprise. I was getting ready for work when I received the push notification saying that Tate and his brother were on the way to America. I was slightly confused when I read it, I'll be honest, but I perhaps had reason not to be.
Ali Mitib is a news reporter at The Times.
Their case had become cause célèbre in right-wing circles, and I was aware that the brothers had been the subject of high-level meetings between the US and Romania, and that several high-level White House officials took an interest in the case.
Last Thursday, the British-American brothers Andrew and Tristan Tate landed in Florida on a private jet. It was a shocking development, as, until that moment, the pair had been under a travel ban in Romania, where they faced charges of human trafficking and sexual exploitation. They're also being investigated for rape and human trafficking in the UK. The brothers deny all the allegations, and on landing in the US to a media scrum, were quick to defend themselves.
We live in a democratic society where it's innocent until proven guilty, and I think my brother and I are largely misunderstood. There's a lot of opinions about us, a lot of things that go around about us on the internet. We've yet to be convicted of any crime in our lives ever. We have no criminal record anywhere on the planet ever.
Andrew and Tristan Tate are known for their personas online, where they regularly spout extremely violent and misogynistic views.
That's how it goes. Slap, slap, grab, choke, shut up, bitch, sex. These are the basic moves of pimping.
Despite their infamy, the US government lobbied for their travel ban to be lifted. But why does the Trump administration want to help them?
Brothers have built up an online fan base of millions of young men and boys. And Trump, part of his success being elected in 2024 was tapping into that movement, tapping into a podcast world, the manosphere, the far-right world.
So how have we got to a point where President Donald Trump is supporting a self-described misogynist? And will the brothers ever go on trial? The story today, why the Americans are helping Andrew Tate.
My name is Ali Mitib, and I'm a news reporter at The Times.
So, Ali, when did you first become aware of Andrew Tate?
I first heard of Andrew Tate in June of 2022. For context, I had just turned 26 and I was at a lunch with some mates from university. Someone was discussing an interaction that they had with someone. That person who they were interacting with had said something quite worrying and quite questionable and quite misogynistic. And one of my friends said, "Sounds like Andrew Tate." And I remember thinking to myself, I have no idea who that is. But I would say it was just a matter of days until the algorithm got to me and Andrew Tate was just all over my social media feeds. He portrayed himself as a cigar-smoking playboy, and he talked about hitting and choking women. He talked about trashing their belongings and stopping them from going out.
You don't go to the club with your friends. I don't know what kind of bitch-ass dude is letting his chicks go to the club with her friends without him. No, you stay in the house.
By that point, Tate had millions of followers who supported his brand of toxic masculinity. And domestic abuse charities had begun to warn that he was capable of radicalizing men and young boys to commit harm offline.
So now you do know an awful lot more about Andrew Tate. Tell us, who is he, where's he from, and what do we know about him and his background?
Emery Andrew Tate III was born in Washington, D.C. on December 1st, 1986, to a British mother and an American father who met in the UK. After the parents divorced in 1997, his mother, Eileen Tate, moved back to Luton. At the age of 16, Andrew began kickboxing and started training on the road in Luton, out in a cul-de-sac. He did work very hard to succeed in his kickboxing career, and in 2011 he won the first of 4 world titles. And it was also around then that he began to get into camming, which means employing women to appear on online sex webcams and taking a cut of their profits. But the notoriety he achieved as a fighter wasn't enough for him. Tate had always sought a career in the spotlight, and in 2016 Andrew got what he believed was his big break. He appeared on Big Brother, and ultimately 6 days in, he was kicked out after a video surfaced appearing to show him hitting a woman with a belt. He later said it was a consensual sex game between 2 friends.
Right. Now, timelines are a little bit murky about this sort of thing, but it's around this time, isn't it, in 2016 sometime, that he starts associating with right-wing figures, including members of the Trump family.
Yes, exactly. In around August 2017, just months into Donald Trump's first presidency, Donald Trump Jr., his eldest son, is reported to have invited Andrew to a photo call at Trump Tower. A picture of them exists together at Trump Tower, wearing a very shiny gold jacket and a very kind of Trump-esque show of wealth.
Just for the occasion.
Yes. It's important to say we don't know how much Trump Jr. was aware of Tate or his views at that point. It's also around that time that he begins associating with another product of Luton, Stephen Yaxley Lennon, the far-right activist known as Tommy Robinson. Tate described Tommy Robinson in a podcast as a solid guy with a good heart whom he has hung out with untold times.
So this is all 7 odd years ago, the early days of Trump's first presidency, as you said. How influential has Andrew Tate become since then?
So Andrew Tate really took off in 2022 after the success of Hustlers University, a get-rich-quick scheme which promises to, quote, free the modern man from socially induced incarceration. It was around that time, that summer, that members of Hustlers University were told to flood social media with videos of Andrew Tate. This is why we kind of see that around 2022, him taking off and appearing on my feed, my friends' feeds, all of our feeds.
What sort of statements was Andrew Tate making in these videos about himself and about other people?
In the videos, he would often describe himself and his views as misogynistic.
I will state right now that I am absolutely sexist and I'm absolutely a misogynist.
He believes in quote-unquote traditional masculinity, men being strong, men being dominant, and women being subservient. Tate in particular has been singled out for having a quite concerning effect on young boys. And in July 2024, the UK's National Police Chiefs Council warned that Tate and influencers like him were radicalising boys into extreme misogyny in a way that was quite terrifying. They described the issue as a national emergency, phrases that police don't use lightly.
So, Ali, you've talked about the influence that can be almost tracked directly back to Andrew Tate, which people are seeing in the classrooms and on social media. Why do you think young men are so drawn to him?
I think Tate has been really successful in targeting young men who feel alienated by society. There have been a lot of positive strides over the past decade with things such as the Me Too movement, and discussions about the concept of toxic masculinity and what that means and how this is impacting the development of boys and young men. And generally, I would say it has been positive. A lot of men have begun to think more about their emotions, think more about how they approach relationships with women, However, attached to that is the feeling of among a group of young men who just feel disenfranchised, really. There are some boys and young men which are in essence confused about the role that men should be playing within society now. And there is a desire to reject feminism and embrace what they may call traditional masculinity. This goes back to what we said earlier about kind of men being dominant in the household, men being dominant in society. Tate plays into that and tells these young boys entering adulthood, and even those who are older and struggling to find their feet, that it's okay to want to be a traditional man, in a sense. And in one video, he kind of explains it really well.
There's a large contingent of the population. There's a large contingent of men out there who don't want to wear makeup, who don't want to be girls, who don't want to be told they're toxic because they want to go to the gym, who want to drive nice cars, who want to have money, who want to have hot chicks. And there's nothing wrong with us. We are not evil. We are not bad. We're not misogynistic.
That's kind of part of it. He's having that success because he is able to tap into that feeling and tell boys, it's fine, you can be this. I think something else that is an important part is how he markets himself. In his videos, he's surrounded by supercars, he's in wood-panelled rooms smoking cigars, he's fighting with his shirts off, showing his muscles. This is kind of the braggadocious persona that appeals to young boys. One thing which cannot be denied in terms of his rise and his popularity is the influence of porn culture. The way he talks about women leans into that. And he has talked about hitting and choking women.
I perfected this in pimp school. When I got my PhD, we had to practice if a girl comes at you, you cheater, you're cheating. It's bang out the machete, boom in her face, and then grip her up by the neck. Like, shut up, bitch! Her panties get wet.
Which is really starting to show its effect in terms of this effect on young boys.
So, Ali, Andrew Tate was awaiting trial in Romania, although he's obviously now in the US. Can you tell us why he was in Romania in the first place, and what exactly are the charges that he's facing over there?
So the Tate brothers decided to move from the UK to Romania in 2017. Tate said that they decided to move because, quote, when you're rich in Romania, you can get away with things. He explained his decision to leave Britain by saying that 40% of the reason he moved to Romania was, quote, because rape laws are more lenient there. Adding, I'm not a fucking rapist, but I like the idea of just being able to do what I want. He then said, if you're a man in England or Germany or America or any of the Western world right now, you've decided to live in a country where any woman at any point in the future can destroy your life. The Tate brothers first came to the interest of the Romanian authorities in April 2022 when the authorities received the tip that an American woman was being held against her will at a video studio near to their home. Their mansion was raided and the brothers were questioned and later released. It was in December 2022 when the brothers were arrested at their compound in Romania as part of the same investigation into allegations of human trafficking and rape. They also face charges of sexual misconduct, money laundering, and forming an organised crime group to sexually exploit women. The brothers deny all allegations.
So they've chosen to go to the US, but what about the UK? Did they have the option of coming back here at all?
So the Tate brothers are facing separate legal cases in the UK. In March last year, Bedfordshire police, who were investigating Andrew on allegations of rape and human trafficking, were granted a warrant to extradite him and his brother to the UK. This would have taken place at the end of the proceedings in Romania, but they have not gone ahead yet. The Tates also face a separate case in the civil court. In May 2024, 3 British women who claimed they were raped by Andrew Tate sought compensation. The women, along with a 4th alleged victim, also claimed they were the victims of coercive control and physical attacks while Tate was running an online sex business in Luton, Bedfordshire between 2013 and 2015. It's important to say that the brothers strongly deny all allegations.
So, Ali, that's a litany of charges that they're facing here in the UK, which, as you said, could only take place after a Romanian trial. Do we have any idea when or even if that might happen now?
It is a very tricky question to answer. I mean, the Tates are reported to have promised to return to Romania at the end of March. It would certainly become a bit of a diplomatic tiff between the US, Romania, and the UK if they don't return to Romania. But in truth, at the moment, everything is up in the air. It's all in question, and it all really hinges on what the Tates decide to do in America.
I'm Hugh Tomlinson, the Washington reporter for The Times and The Sunday Times.
So, Hugh, you are in the US. How much of a profile did the Tate brothers have with the general US public?
General US public, it's hard to say, but certainly their cases have received a lot of media attention in the US. And of course, they were already international celebrities in the so-called manosphere. And crucially, of course, the Tates have gained powerful friends among Donald Trump's inner circle.
So let's take a step back, Hugh, to how on earth this happened. So in February, there were reports of an intervention by the US administration in the Tates case. Can you explain a bit more about what happened there?
Yeah, so we know that the Tates case was first raised in a phone call between US and Romanian officials in early February. Then days later at the Munich Security Conference, Trump's special envoy Richard Grenell, who's a vocal supporter of the brothers, was reported to have raised the matter in a meeting with the Romanian foreign minister. And then the Trump administration is believed to have requested that the brothers' passports were returned, which would allow them to travel while the investigations against them continue. Romanian ministers have denied there was any explicit pressure or intervention from the White House, but days later, the Tates were on a plane to Florida.
Interesting. What else do we know about their connection with the Trumps and the administration?
As news of their flight out of Romania broke, Joseph McBride, the Tate's American lawyer, said that the main reasons the brothers felt safe to return to the US was that Donald Trump is now the president, and they are excited to call America their home again. And they do have connections going back some way with the Trump administration and his family. In 2023, when he posted about his house arrest in Romania, Don Jr., who is Trump's eldest son and a close advisor in the new administration, replied on Twitter that this was absolute insanity. And they have other connections as well. I mean, Paul Ingrassia, one of the lawyers that Andrew Tate hired to fight his human trafficking case, was recently sworn in as a White House liaison to the Justice Department. Elon Musk has tweeted his support and has also used Twitter, now X, of course, to pressure the Romanian government. Dan Bongino, who was appointed last week as Deputy Director of the FBI, has promoted Tate's account on Rumble. So yeah, there's many connections. I should say not everyone in Trump world is a fan. Sebastian Gorka, who is now Trump's counterterrorism director and deputy assistant, has called Andrew Tate scum and a small man who feels big by beating women. So not universal acclaim.
Not universal, but certainly plenty of friends in high places in this administration.
Exactly.
So aside from the weather, Hugh, for what reasons have they gone to Florida?
I mean, certainly it looks like a statement. Florida is Trump's home state. It is also the home state of the American woman who's filed a civil lawsuit against the Tates, accusing them of luring her to Romania and then trying to recruit her in this webcam sex trafficking ring, who's named only as Jane Doe. She's been granted this pseudonym by the court to protect her real identity, but she was 20 when she met Tristan Tate while he was visiting Miami. She says she then moved to Romania believing he loved her. She was rescued by police during a raid on the brothers' Romanian compound in 2022. And upon arrival in Florida, the Tates have filed a restraining order against that woman. And this restraining order claims that the woman has caused them emotional distress through credible threats of violence, intimidation or harm against them. Danny Pinter, a lawyer for Jane Doe, this woman, has said that the Tates' arrival in Florida feels like intimidation of a witness. Pinter said they could have gone anywhere, but they came to Florida. It felt like a statement.
So I just want to clarify, the Tate brothers have taken out a restraining order in Florida on an alleged victim who was rescued from their compound in Romania.
That's correct.
Wow. So just back to the Trumps for a minute, Hugh. We know that they do have friends in the manosphere. Other members of the manosphere have been invited to Mar-a-Lago recently. But why would the Trumps want to associate themselves with men who self-identify as misogynists and men who have been charged with rape and human trafficking?
I mean, the Tates have claimed credit for helping Trump win back the presidency. Soon after Trump's election victory in November, Tristan Tate tweeted that what he and his brother have been doing for the last 4 years has raised awareness among young men about gender issues and so on, and about a right-wing approach to politics. I mean, as he said, millions of young men in Europe and the US have a healthy right-wing approach to politics that they would not have had if Andrew Tate had never appeared on their phone screens. Trump tapped into the manosphere to great effect during last year's election campaign as he reached out to millennial and Gen Z voters, going on conservative men's podcasts, meeting right-wing influencers at Mar-a-Lago, leaning into that growing support among young men, particularly growing support among Black and Latino voters, and it was hugely effective. Young men swung firmly to the right in November in a backlash against the quote, woke fixation on the left. And as I say, the Tates have claimed some credit for that. There's also a question of loyalty. I mean, Trump has demonstrated in the early weeks of his new administration that he prizes loyalty above all else in his second term. During the campaign, there were nods and winks to the extreme fringe of his support. Since he's won, he's installed arch loyalists in every position of power, regardless of their qualifications or experience. We've seen him free the January 6th rioters, including far-right militia leaders. We've seen the embrace of QAnon. And this move with the Tates, is another reminder that sort of loyalty to Trump will always be rewarded, regardless of the allegations against you.
On that anti-woke agenda note, other US departments of government have been brought into this as well, haven't they? What have the Tates been saying about USAID?
Yeah, well, exactly. This incident, this case also feeds into the Trump administration's aggressive foreign policy in its early weeks towards Europe and NATO, and cuts at home to the federal government, including foreign aid, which has seen USAID or USAID dismantled and USAID programs around the world frozen. And ahead of the negotiations that secured their release, I mean, Tristan Tate speculated that perhaps USAID funding had financed the investigations against the brothers in Romania. Romania itself has been singled out for criticism by senior Trump administration officials in recent days. Grinnell has claimed that USAID programs were used to target conservative figures, citing Romania as an example. And the most explicit attack, of course, came a couple of weeks ago from J.D. Vance, the vice president, in his fiery speech, also at the Munich Security Conference, where he castigated European leaders for suppressing free speech. And Vance singled out Romania for criticism for cancelling the election in November over suspicions of Russian interference.
I'd ask my European friends to have some perspective. You can believe it's wrong for Russia to buy social media advertisements to influence your elections. We certainly do. You can condemn it on the world stage even. But if your democracy can be destroyed with a few $100,000 of digital advertising from a foreign country, then it wasn't very strong to begin with.
So, bringing it back to the UK for a minute, Hugh, the Tate brothers landed in Florida on the same day that Keir Starmer was having his first meeting with Trump at the White House. And Trump was asked about the Tates by reporters that day. What did he say?
Trump said that he knew nothing about it.
Did your administration pressure the Romanian government to release them? And if so, why?
I know nothing about that. I don't know. You're saying he's on a plane right now?
He's back. They already made it.
Yeah, I just know nothing about it. We'll check it out. We'll let you know.
It's certainly another real headache for Keir Starmer as he tries to navigate already very tricky terrain with Trump over Ukraine and the future of NATO. It seems likely that some within the Trump administration would oppose an extradition request from the UK. And it's less certain, I suppose, that there is political appetite for a public row with the White House at the moment over the Tate brothers, when Starmer is desperately trying to keep the US on side over support for Ukraine and, the transatlantic alliance as a whole. The British women who claim they were victims of Tate have called on the UK government to seek Tate's extradition, and obviously not doing so would provoke a huge backlash at home.
Can you see a position now in which there is a chance of them even going on trial in the UK at any point?
Well, we shall have to see whether the UK government has the stomach for that fight. There will be a lot of back-channel diplomacy, I would imagine. You would assume they would not want to publicly make a public extradition request and be rebuffed at such a critical time when US-European relations are so finely poised. And as I said, there is real acrimony within the administration towards some of their European allies. On the wider question, the investigation in Romania have not gone away. They are due in court at the end of this month in Bucharest, and they are supposed to report to the authorities there every 90 days. So that will be the first key test of whether the Trump administration is ready to go out on a limb to protect them, perhaps claiming they won't get a fair trial or the Romanian justice system is not fair. Another test of the Trump administration's commitment to its alliances overseas, to the norms of international law and extradition treaties and so on. But those cases are not going away.
If you've been affected by issues in this podcast, we've put some useful links and helplines in the description notes of this episode. That was Hugh Tomlinson, the Times Washington reporter, and Ali Mitib, news reporter at The Times. You can read more of their work at thetimes.com with a subscription. And if you found this interesting, then listen back to our episode with Hugo Rifkind about his trip to Romania to interview Andrew Tate in 2022. We'll put a link to that in the episode notes too. The producer was Sam Chantarasak, the executive producer was Will Rowe, and sound design and theme composition was by Mao Lassetto. I'm Jane Mulkerrins. If you can, please do leave us a review. It'll help others to find us. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.